listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me, non-judgmental talk about infidelity with Dr. Marie Murphy. If you're looking for new perspectives on complicated relationship issues, you've come to the right place.
Days go by, they're crawling by.
Hello, good humans. I'm Dr. Marie Murphy, and I'm a relationship coach, and I help people who are engaging in anything they think counts as infidelity to deal with their feelings, clarify what they want, and make decisions about what they're going to do. No shame, no blame, no judgments. I understand that a lot of interesting things can happen in life. And no matter how complicated your situation may currently seem, I promise you that it's possible for you to find relief and resolution. So if you'd like my help working through your infidelity situation, you can schedule an introductory coaching session with me through my website, mariemurphyphd.com. I can't wait to meet you. All right, today we're going to talk about couples therapy or couples counseling, and I'm going to use those terms interchangeably. A lot of my clients who are married or are in a committed relationship and also have some kind of infidelity situation going on are either in couples therapy or have been in couples therapy or are thinking about going to or back to couples therapy. And often clients ask me what I think about this or what I think they should do. And my role is always to help people decide what they want to do, right? My job is to help you clarify your thinking so that you can make decisions that you feel great about. I can't tell you whether you should go to couples therapy or not. I can't tell you whether or not it's going to be helpful for you, but I can help you decide whether you want to do it. And I can tell you right now that the most important questions I ask people when they're asking me if they should go to couples therapy or keep going if they're already going are these questions. Why are you going? Or why are you considering going? Do you like your reasons for going or considering going? And if yes, then what do you want to get out of it? How specifically can you define what you want to get out of it? Now, here's the thing. When I ask people these kinds of questions, they often tell me that they don't really know. They don't really know why they're going. They don't really know what they want to get out of it. They don't really know if they like their reasons for going, if they have any reasons for going. Here's the deal, people. Couples therapy is something that some people find very helpful. And it is also something that some people do not find helpful. And while I want to make it abundantly clear that I am not making any pronouncements on whether couples counseling is categorically good or bad or beneficial or not, the point that I do want to make is that I see a lot of folks going to couples therapy or continuing with couples therapy for reasons that might not be great. And by reasons that might not be great, I mean reasons that don't line up with what they want the most or don't line up with our ultimate goals. This isn't a recipe for anything good, people, right? So let me give you some examples of what this often looks like in practice, and maybe you'll see your own experiences reflected in these examples, right? Okay, example number one. Sometimes people go to couples counseling because their partner wants them to. Now, if your partner wants to go to couples counseling for any reason, that's great. That is a legitimate thing for them to want under any circumstances. And you might believe that going to couples counseling simply because they want you to is good enough reason to go. And if that's true for you and you like that reason, that is terrific. That's totally legitimate. But a lot of times people tell me they're going to couples counseling because their partner insisted, and they keep going because their partner insists, even though they themselves don't really want to do it. And even though they don't think the couples counseling is doing anything for them. And what's more, sometimes people tell me that their partner wanted them to go to couples counseling so that they could save their relationship or work on their relationship. Those were the explicit aims. And they agreed to go with those being the explicit aims, even though they themselves are not actually sure if they want to work on the relationship or stay in the relationship at all. They're going along with what their partner wants because they think they have to, or they think they'll hurt their partner's feelings if they don't, or they think it's the quote unquote right thing to do, or something along those lines. Now, believe me, I understand that people do this all the time. So if you've been doing this, I totally get it. And there's no shame in that. But if you've been doing something that you don't really want to do, and you've sort of been hoping that doing so will somehow lead to a good outcome of some sort, I want to suggest that you are engaging in magical thinking. Sometimes we think that if we just do what our partner wants us to do, everything will turn out fine. And sometimes that may sort of work depending on what you want out of life in general and your romantic life in particular. But let me tell you, this is anything but a surefire strategy for getting what you want or even being reasonably satisfied with your life for that matter. It's just not a great strategy to rely on. If you're going to couples counseling because your partner wants you to, and you aren't clear on whether or not you really want to be there at all or what you want to get out of it, then the chances of something amazing happening in counseling aren't all that great. And moreover, sometimes we go along with our partner's desire to go to counseling because we're trying to avoid making some big decisions about our relationship or communicating where we stand on matters of major importance within our relationship. And this happens a lot with people who are engaging in infidelity. If you're cheating in some way or another and you don't know what you want, and you certainly don't know what you want to tell your partner or not tell your partner about what's going on, going to couples counseling because your partner wants you to may be an awesome way to avoid figuring out what you really want to do about your infidelity situation or taking any kind of action in service of what you want, right? So it may be a really helpful stalling technique. In addition to that, for some people who are cheating, the logic is that because they feel bad for cheating on their partner, they think they should at least go to couples counseling because their partner wants them to somehow compensate for what they feel bad about doing, right? It's not so bad if I'm cheating if I go to couples counseling because my partner wants me to. And, I get it. Like, I understand we all rationalize things in interesting ways, but you've got to ask yourself if you think this is really doing anyone any favors or not. Maybe you really think it is. And if that's what you think, it is your prerogative to think that way, for sure. And you might want to take a close look at this one. Example number 2, another thing that happens a lot is that someone will tell their partner or their spouse that they want to end the relationship, they want a divorce, and the person they're trying to break up with will beg them to go to couples counseling, and the person who initiated the breakup or asked for the divorce will end up going to counseling even though they don't want to. There's an idea that is floating around out there that in order to end a relationship or get a divorce, we must do everything possible, or we ought to do everything possible to save the relationship before we call it quits. Closely related to that idea is the notion that ending a relationship, especially if it's a marriage, is categorically bad. Or if not bad, then at least less than ideal or extremely sad. We have this shared idea that unless a relationship is quote unquote toxic or terrible or abusive, then we don't really have the right to want to end it. And buying into these ideas can happen, number one. And number 2, buying into these ideas can have a lot of effects. And one of them may be that we end up believing that we're obligated to go to couples counseling before we leave a relationship if our partner wants us to, even if we are as sure as we can be that we want to leave the relationship. I want to suggest that you are allowed to decide that you want to leave a relationship and stick to that decision. If your partner doesn't want to end the relationship, you are still allowed to want to. Sometimes when someone doesn't want a relationship to end, they try to find ways of convincing their partner to stay with them, or at least they attempt to do this. And that's okay. It's okay for your person to try to keep you around. Why wouldn't they want to let you go? Or why Did I say that right? Why wouldn't they want to let you go? Why would they want to let you go? That's what I mean to say. Gosh, words are hard sometimes. You're amazing and wonderful. Why would they want to give you up? But you still have the right to say no. I don't want to go to counseling. I don't want to try to make any changes here. I don't want to quote unquote save the relationship. I am ready for this relationship to be over or over in this particular form. Sometimes see with people who are or have been engaging in some kind of infidelity, this idea that maybe their infidelity was the cause of their unhappiness in their relationship, as opposed to, for instance, a symptom or an effect of their unhappiness in their relationship. And on the one hand, I think this is a really useful thing to consider, or at least it can be. But on the other hand, some people use this line of thinking to second guess themselves after they've come to a conclusion about wanting to end the relationship. What happens is they start the process of breaking up with their person, and their person gets upset and doesn't want to break up. And then the person doing the breaking up feels bad because they don't want their partner or their soon to be ex partner to be sad or upset. And then the person doing the breaking up starts to question themselves. They think, oh, maybe we should go to counseling because maybe I'm the reason why this relationship isn't working out. Or maybe they just want to do anything their partner wants them to do, which could be going to counseling because they so badly want for their partner or potentially soon to be ex partner to feel okay. And this closely relates to example number 3. Sometimes people want to go to counseling because they want to end the relationship and they want their partner to be able to understand their decision. They think that talking with a therapist, working through the breakup with a couples counselor will help their partner feel okay about the breakup. This is a tricky one for a few reasons. For one thing, it sounds so noble to want your partner to be okay. It sounds so great to want your partner to understand why you're choosing to leave the relationship. It sounds really nice to achieve some sort of shared understanding about what's going on with the two of you, right? We get into relationships by mutual agreement, or we formalize relationships by mutual agreement. So it can sound really nice to want to end a relationship by mutual agreement. And indeed, it can be nice when that happens, right? It's not unreasonable to want this like nice, amicable breakup full of mutual understanding. That's fine to want. But it's also important to be aware that there's no guarantee of this happening. Your partner might never understand why you want to leave the relationship. They may never agree that ending the relationship is quote unquote for the best. You may never get them to buy into the idea that getting divorced is a good idea. And that may be really sad for you. You may long for them to understand, and you may really, really want them to feel okay. But it's one thing to wish for their understanding and be sad if you don't get it. But making someone else's appreciation for your desire to leave the relationship the prerequisite for you leaving is a recipe for not actually leaving. If you think that your partner has to understand your reasons for wanting to break up or to be okay with ending the relationship, that may never happen and you may never go through with the breakup. Now, interestingly, some people understand this intellectually, but also try to get around it. They think that this is the reason why going to couples counseling would be so helpful. They think that, well, it's possible that my partner will never be okay with ending the relationship. But if we go to a therapist to talk about it, then that will at least up the chances of them understanding and being okay with it. And again, this is a tricky thing because on the one hand, I think it's totally reasonable to want a therapist to help you break up with your partner or help you explain your reasoning for wanting to end your relationship with your partner or wanting the therapist to facilitate your partner's understanding of why you want to end the relationship. I think it's okay to want these things. I think it's fair anyway, or human to want these things. And I will tell you, from hearing about so many people's experiences of trying to enlist a therapist for the purpose of facilitating a breakup is that it doesn't always work out to your advantage in practice, right? Sometimes people go to a couples therapist because they want help breaking up with their partner, only to have the couples counselor try to talk them out of ending the relationship or urging them to give the relationship another try before they consider ending it. Sometimes the couples therapist ends up kind of siding with the person who you're breaking up with and saying, look how sad they are. They really don't want to end this. Don't you want to give this another try? And, if you want to do these things, if you want to give the relationship another try, that's totally fine. But if you want to end the relationship, you are not obligated to reconsider, even if a therapist tells you that you really should. That's your decision to make. Now, to some extent, this kind of a situation may be preventable by being very clear about what you want to get out of couples therapy and making sure that your therapist is amenable to working with you in the service of your stated goals. That said, I've also had plenty of clients tell me that they go to a couples therapist and they tell them exactly what they want. They want help ending their relationship. And then the sessions get underway and things get a little funny. And the client starts to feel like the therapist has their own agenda. And of course, I don't know exactly what's going on in these situations. I'm not sitting there observing the situations. I'm not sitting on the couch too. So I can't tell you exactly what's going on, right? It could be that the client is having second thoughts. It could be that the therapist is going rogue. It could be a little of both. It could be neither. I don't know exactly what the deal is. But the point is that going to a couples therapist to try to ensure that your partner understands why you want to break up is not guaranteed to work out as the automatic solution you may think it's going to be. Even more interesting than that is this. Even if we go to a couples therapist to help us break up with our partner, and we love the support we get from the therapist, and we think that everything the counselor does is amazing and perfect, we will still have the job of tolerating our discomfort associated with ending the relationship. No matter what the therapist does, and even if going to therapy with your partner does actually lead them to feel better about the breakup, this may not relieve you of all of your uncomfortable feelings related to ending the relationship. And it's always your job to learn how to tolerate those. In addition, if your partner is having a hard time with the breakup, they can always seek professional assistance for themselves if they choose, right? But that's different from you going to couples therapy with them and potentially having to explain or even justify your decision. Not that you ever have to do that. Of course, you don't have to do that, right? But you may be put into a situation where the therapist and your partner are essentially asking you to do that over and over again. But number one, not only do you not have to explain or justify your decision, period. Number two, there may never be anything you can say that will convince your partner to accept your decision, even if there is a therapist there who is supposed to be facilitating that process. Example number 4. Sometimes people go to couples therapy because they believe they owe it to their partner to do that before officially ending the relationship. If you've been in this kind of a situation, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It can be excruciating to want to leave a relationship and also believe that you can't leave the relationship for one reason or another. Some people believe that because they committed to their partner for life, they literally cannot leave the relationship. But the reason doesn't really matter. If you believe you can't leave a relationship, that's the main point. The specific reasons are secondary. Sometimes people who are in this situation tell me they're going to couples therapy because, they owe it to their partner before they break up with them. They're sure that they want to end the relationship, but they also think it will be better or potentially okay for them to do so if they go to couples counseling with their partner first. And my question for folks in that situation is, why do you think it will be better? If you're sure about what you want, and if that is ending the relationship, Why is it better to go to counseling first? Now, let me say that when I'm actually talking to people about this and I ask them these questions, sometimes we discover that they do have reasons for going to counseling before ending the relationship that they really like. And that's great, right? Making these making these reasons explicit can be tremendously helpful. It can clear a whole lot up sometimes. But on the other hand, sometimes we discover that they're just going to counseling or considering going to counseling for the sake of checking a box on some vaguely and arbitrarily defined checklist. And is that really doing anyone any favors? You get to decide what you think about this, of course, right? But I want to suggest that if your mind is made up and you know what you want, there may not be any hoops you need to jump through in order to act on your decision. Now, another thing people sometimes tell me is that they're hoping that going to counseling will convince them that they don't actually want to leave the relationship. They're hoping that something will happen in counseling that will change their mind. And they think that they owe it to their partner to see if something will change their mind before they leave the relationship. Here's what I say to that. If you want to change your mind about your relationship, great. You can intentionally dedicate yourself to that project, but make a clear decision about this. Do you actively want to try to change your mind about your relationship or not? Passively hoping that something will happen is not a great strategy for anything much. If you want to see if your relationship is salvageable, you can totally do that. And I think that's a great thing to do if you want to. But if you don't want to, what are you really doing for your partner by going to couples counseling with them just to see if something might happen? Last but not least, example number 5. Your cheating has been discovered or disclosed, and your partner's really mad about it, and they insist you go to couples therapy with them to make things right. My usual disclaimer applies here, of course. If this is your situation and you want to go to couples counseling, by all means, go for it. But sometimes people don't want to do it and they go anyway because they think they have to do it. They think that they did something bad and their partner has a right to make demands of them. And so they go to counseling even if they truly do not want to go. Now, I want to suggest that it is fine and wonderful to want to take responsibility for your actions. If you've cheated and you don't feel good about that and you want to be accountable for that, that's great. But that does not compel you to any particular course of action. I've worked with clients who get caught cheating and then they go to couples therapy. And the therapy sometimes ends up being all about their partner and their therapist telling them what they've done wrong and trying to figure out how to fix them. And sometimes it's a little more nuanced than that, but sometimes it really isn't. And what I want you to know is that you can decide whether or not you want to participate in that sort of therapy experience or any sort of therapy experience or not. Your partner has a right to be mad at you if you've cheated on them, but that does not mean that you have to tolerate any and all expressions of their anger. And if you are working with a professional who does not treat you with respect and compassion, you have a right to decide that you do not want to work with them anymore. You are entitled to guidance and support that respects the fullness of your humanity and the complexity of your situation, no matter what. All right. I'm going to say that again. I don't care what you've done. You are entitled to guidance and support that respects the fullness of your humanity, not just your partner's, and the complexity of your situation. Period. The end. Full stop. Sometimes people stay in therapy situations where they're essentially getting berated because they think they have to, but you do not have to do that. Even if you have done something that you don't feel great about, that does not mean you are obligated to put up with behavior from other people that is not okay with you. Okay. In summary, I think it's important to get clear on what your intentions are for going to counseling. If you've been going and you like it and you can identify ways in which you're finding it helpful, that is fantastic. And there is no need to question that. But if you don't know why you're going, or you don't know what you're getting out of it, or you don't know what you'd hope to get out of it, it might be time to ask yourself the kinds of questions I've been posing today. Now, you may ask, are there any good reasons to go to couples counseling, in my opinion? And my shortest and best answer to that question is that any reason you like is a good reason to go. Some people find couples counseling to be incredibly beneficial. And if you do, that is awesome. If you're going and you're getting something out of it that you like, then it doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. Although I am pointing out that some people go to couples counseling for reasons that might not be all that great, I am not suggesting that there aren't any great reasons to go. There certainly can be. And actually, even if you are using couples counseling as a means of avoiding decisions or stalling or kicking the can down the road and not figuring out what you want to do about your infidelity situation, if you like doing that, then by all means, carry on. Sometimes avoidance is the best we can do. But if that's where we are, we can do ourselves a favor by becoming more conscious of what we're doing. Consciously being in avoidance mode is different from unconsciously being in avoidance mode. All right. One last-ish thing I want to touch on is that therapy and coaching, or counseling and coaching, are often compared to each other. And sometimes the specifics of the comparisons I hear are a little surprising to me. And in addition to that, sometimes I hear people saying that therapy and coaching are essentially the same thing. And I don't think it's appropriate to say that coaching and therapy are essentially the same thing. And moreover, I think a lot of people would vehemently disagree with the notion that therapy and coaching are essentially the same thing. But I do think it is fair to point out that both therapy and coaching are approaches to helping humans deal with their own humanity. So they are similar in that sense. However, in my experiences of therapy and coaching, they can also be quite different. Since there are many different styles of therapy and many different styles of coaching, and since so much depends on the specific practitioner you work with, whether they're a therapist or a coach or both or whatever, I don't attempt to make definitive statements about how therapy and coaching are similar and different. However, I'm going to contradict myself momentarily. If you're trying to figure out whether therapy is right for you or coaching is right for you, I think the most pragmatic thing for you to do is learn as much as you can about the approach and the perspectives of the practitioner you're interested in working with, and then give it a try. Sometimes that's just the best way to do it. Now, I am going to say a few things about what coaching is and how it may be different from therapy. The point of coaching as I practice it is to learn how to take more responsibility for the things you have the power to control and to learn how to develop a new relationship to the many things you do not have the power to control, including but not limited to other people. And the reason why I practice coaching in this way is because it is the most empowering approach to dealing with the joys and sorrows and difficulties and struggles of being human that I have used for myself and as a practitioner with others, right? And just for the sake of being clear about my own experiences and perspectives, I've participated in a fair amount of individual therapy and couples therapy and even family therapy with my family of origin. God help me. And none of it was ever as helpful as I wanted it to be. And that is not a blanket criticism of therapy. Let me make that absolutely clear. I am not offering any all encompassing pronouncements on the value of therapy, people. That's not the point. But it is my perspective that we are all a lot better off when we learn how to take responsibility for our own stuff. It is my perspective that our relationships are a lot better when we focus on dealing with the stuff that we have the power to control. And I never got that kind of an approach from any therapist, even when I went sometimes with the explicit request of help in learning how to take more responsibility for my experience of relationship dynamics. Now, of course, it is possible that some therapists do emphasize the power of taking responsibility for your own business. And it's also true that some coaches don't emphasize this. I have worked with a few coaches who don't even seem to be aware of this concept or didn't even seem to be aware of this sort of like way of doing things. And I didn't find their coaching very helpful, even though in general, I find coaching tremendously helpful and empowering. So I want to emphasize that there is variety and variation out there, right? It's impossible to say all therapists do this or all coaches are like that. But to be clear, coaching as I practice it, and as many other coaches practice it, is all about learning how to take responsibility for ourselves rather than waiting for other people or other things to change. A lot of the problems that we think are caused by other people or are a product of our quote unquote relationship dynamics are actually completely within our power to change. And this is the best thing in the world. We don't have to wait for other people or wait for external circumstances to change for us to feel better. We can deal with ourselves and our own business. And when we change, our relationships change. One way or another, if we change, the dynamics we participate in change as well. And all of this is true no matter what your relationship situation looks like, by the way. Although I primarily work with people who are engaging in some kind of infidelity, most of the concepts I talk about on this podcast apply to any relationship. And that is certainly true of everything we've talked about today. Plenty of people go to couples therapy as a means of avoiding big decisions about their relationships, even when infidelity isn't part of the equation. And plenty of people use couples therapy as a means of avoiding things that aren't even really related to their relationship. Rather, they are karmic challenges that they as an individual have the opportunity to reckon with and take more individual responsibility. Fascinating. Okay, excuse me. If you would like to learn how to take responsibility for what you have the power to control within your infidelity situation, let's work together. Most of us are deep in the habit of believing that we have less power to change our relationships and our romantic lives than we actually have. And I can show you how much power you really do have to change these areas of your life. And I can help you make decisions about how you want to use that power. When you're ready to get started, you can schedule an introductory coaching session with me through my website, mariemurphyphd.com. I can't wait to meet you. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for listening. That's it for today. I hope you have a great week. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Thanks for listening to Your Secret is Safe with Me with Dr. Marie Murphy. Make sure to click subscribe to get updates on our latest episodes.